Services is a group of 6 programs that we have in the district. Interact, Rotary, which you heard a little bit about this morning from Janice, Ryler, Scholarships, Youth Exchange, and Youth Protection. And we're going to go over each of these very briefly, just to give you a broad overview of each of those programs. Interact, it's basically a club for high school students. Although Rotary says from 12 to 18, it's primarily high school students. And it pretty much gives young people an opportunity to participate in local activities and service projects in the local community. We currently have 18 active clubs, and if anybody's interested in those clubs, you can go onto DACDB and you'll see a tab at the top that says clubs. Click on that, and you'll actually see a listing of all of the Interact clubs. We do have 3 inactive clubs, which we are trying to work on reactivating. And if there are any of you out there that have a high school that doesn't currently have an Interact club, I would suggest you get in contact with either Vince Mitchell, who's our chair, or myself, and let's see what we can do about getting a club started. Next, we have Rotary, which again Janice had mentioned earlier. It's actually, I think we have the wrong age group up there. It's actually from, I guess, about 18, 20 to about 30. Primarily what we've had in the past are college Rotary clubs. In the district, we currently have 3. We have McKendree Bearcats. We have the Seculi, Rotary in Carbondale, and Linden Belleville, which we actually inaugurated. Their first official meeting was this past Monday. It's a brand new club. Again, if anyone is interested in developing a Rotary, and as we had mentioned earlier, Rotary is expanding this now to try and include community groups that become Rotaracts. Then we have Ryler. Ryler, the official name is Rotary Youth Leadership Awards, but in the district we actually call it Rotary Youth Leadership Academy. It's a weekend where we, usually the end of July each year, where we take up to 60 high school students from freshmen and including some seniors, and they participate in a very intensive leadership training program. This year, Ryder will be from July 20th through 22nd. You can contact Karen Cup if you have. Actually, she'll be reaching out, I believe, to each of the clubs in terms of sponsorship. Each student is sponsored by a club. There are a number of clubs that will sponsor multiple students. We also have clubs that don't sponsor students but actually make a contribution so that other clubs can sponsor students. Scholarship, you met Lorraine just a few minutes ago. Lorraine is our chair. We fund 2 scholarships basically each year. The award is $2,500 per student. It requires a resume of community and school involvement, what type of service they do in their community, and they were required to write an essay on service above self. All those applications, I believe, you should have received an email, or your current presidents have received an email. Lorraine, do you want to clarify? Or?
I'm not in the newsletter. It's in the newsletter.
It's in the newsletter. So I would, if you have students, or excuse me, if in the clubs, fill out that application if you have identified deserving students in your community, and those applications have to be in by April 1st.
No exceptions. I get them every year, no exceptions.
Youth Exchange, which is one of the programs that we hear a lot about, and I know a number of clubs are active in that. It's an exchange program for students between the age of 15 and a half and 18 and a half. And 18 and a half, they have to be that 6 months before the actual departure. It builds peace one person at a time, and that's the whole point of the exchange program. I think that in central states, of which we're a part of, and that's a consortium of 18 districts, that cover the Midwest and the lower part of Canada. And I believe we probably send out close to 350 to 450 students each year within those 18 clubs. Currently we have 8 bounds. I'm not going to read the countries, and we have 11 outbounds going out this year, which is a new number for us. Usually prior to this we've had maybe 8, possibly 9, so 11 is a big number for us going outbound. If anybody has any questions, please contact Steve Jackson. He's our chair, or you can contact myself. Okay. And then we have the last program is youth protection. A lot of you probably have heard about that. One of the goals that the district has is to have every Rotarian trained in what we call youth protection. And basically it's a training to give you the tools of awareness so that you can possibly identify abuse of children, or what we like to call vulnerable people, which include the elderly and disabled. We currently have 135 Rotarians in the district that are actively certified. All you have to do, if the club would like, we can do it online, you can do it at a club business meeting, or if you give me a call, I'd be more than happy to come out and do a presentation. The entire presentation will take about an hour, about 35 minutes for the video, 10 minutes for the exam, and we go over the exam. So you figure it'll probably take up the entire meeting. These are the contacts. If anybody has any questions, please get in contact with me. I can always refer you, to the appropriate chair. Questions? Anyone? Did I do okay, Jeff?
David, are all of these on DAC-DB or something, so we know?
We can put it there.
There is a youth file section.
Yeah. Yes, they are.
Good, thank you.
Okay. And Jeff, I did okay? Thank you.
There's another guy I wanted to give recognition to. You see the guy that when you came in and gave your he gave you your name tag. Terry, could you stand? Terry Mathias, let's give him a hand. All right, our next guest, or I shouldn't say guest, our next major speaker is about what, membership? How many people like to have 10 new members next year in your club? Raise your hand. That's what I'm talking about. This gal's going to help you do that. So I'd like to hand it over to our District 6510 membership chair, Mary Harvey. Mary?
Major speaker. Holy cow. Okay, let me just get ready here. We got my Kleenex. I got my Paul's cough drops. Let me see what else. I got a bottle of water here. Anybody else love cold in the flu season? Because man, oh man, I'm telling you what.
Where's your mask?
Hugs, David. All right.
While we're talking about getting ready, Mary, which of these PowerPoints do I want?
We're looking for, what did I say?
Corporate membership or
No,
Centralia?
no, hold on. Do it in order.
Membership. How about that one that said
There it is, pre-press membership.
There you go.
There you go. All right, so yeah, I went to see the grandkids in Wisconsin, and I love them dearly, but they sent me home with this creeping crud, so I apologize. You're lucky, because this is going to be a short presentation. So yes, my name is Mary Harvey. Glad to see everybody here today. I am the district membership chair, and no, I cannot promise you 10 new members, because that's your job. We're going to be working together to make that happen for you. I do have some notes here I'm going to refer to. My background is in human resource consulting and management, and I've done that for about 30 years. The last couple of years, I kind of retired from that and went to work with my husband in his law firm, which is great because it allows me the flexibility and the time that I need to work with Rotary, and specifically Rotary membership, which happens to be a passion of mine. So my role as district membership chair is to support our clubs through training, and consultation on recruitment and retention of Rotary members. Now, if you've been a Rotarian for a while, you know that Rotary as a whole has been having a bit of a problem in a few areas. Anybody want to guess what those areas are? Retention and recruitment, there you go. So that shouldn't be a big surprise. I want to share, where am I looking? Here I am. I want to share some information with you that I found kind of interesting. I read a book by an author, Robert Putnam, Bowling Alone. And in his book, he documents that attending club meetings, such as those held by Rotary and Kiwanis, groups of that nature, has declined by 58% in the period 1975 through 2000, and I can tell you that that has accelerated into the 21st century. And as part of an overall trend by Americans who incidentally have 43% fewer family dinners, and he also makes the point that 35% fewer of us have friends who drop by our homes, like it used to be in the old days, as we call it. So the point that he's making here is that as a society, we're no longer that group of close-knit individuals that seek each other out. Our connections have eroded, basically. And he links this to the decline of membership in communities such as Rotary and other groups. Let's go to the next slide. Because we're not alone here. If you pick any of the organizations that we're familiar with, the numbers are going to tell you the story. In the past 2 decades, Rotary membership is down 20%. JC's is down 64%. And let's feel bad for the Masons, down 76%. So again, we're not alone here. But let's move on to District 6510 and look at some numbers. And I apologize if that didn't line up correctly. What the numbers I want you to look at are along the bottom there. And you can see a steady decline in membership. And my math isn't great, but I'm thinking that's about 8% in a period of about 4 to 5 years. So when you look at these, what's the obvious question? Did somebody say why? Because that's exactly right. Why is this happening? And I wish I could tell you, because the truth is we don't have the data to back it up. I wish I had reports that I could point to and say we're doing this wrong, we're doing that wrong, we're doing this wrong, but we don't, because we're not gathering that information. What I can tell you from the reports that I do see is that for some of the clubs, the numbers reflect that it isn't about losing members, it isn't about retention. We simply aren't taking in any new members, and we haven't done so for a while. That's for some clubs. Other clubs, what I'm seeing is that we've got that revolving door. I think Janice called it something else.
Leaky bucket.
Leaky bucket, revolving door, we all know what we mean. We take in members and we lose members at exactly the same rate. So we're not making any gains there. Okay. So earlier this morning you were asked to input your club goals for the upcoming Rotary year. My goal for your year is to strengthen club membership in 6510 and to help you make your club grow. Now that's going to be a very significant undertaking, and I'm going to need your help to make that happen. But I think I know how we need to begin. Because the thing about a problem is that they can be difficult to solve when we only know the issue, but we don't have any of the steps to do so. So here's my formula. Number 1, oh, I forgot, that's kind of cool. Keep going. Keep going. There we go. We need to define and understand the problem so that you know exactly what you're focusing on, what the real issue is in your club. Each club needs to examine their membership numbers and with regard to recruitment and retention and try to determine what that underlying factor is. Is anybody using exit surveys when you lose a member? I see one hand. Oh, that's all? Okay. When you leave here today, when you go back to the clubs, and I don't want you to wait until your Rotary year begins, I want you to start doing this now. When you have that unfortunate circumstance when you have a member that leaves, I want you to start keeping track of why that is. You know, it could be any number of things, but until we gather that data, we're not going to be able to address the problem. And I'm going to come back to you in a couple of months, and I'm going to ask you to give me that information so that we can start finding out what's going on. I'm also, when I go back next week, I'm going to be emailing you all a copy of the, I think it's called the exit survey for membership. RI has a wonderful tool I will send that to you. You can use it, adapt it any way that you want to, but you don't have to make this stuff up yourself. Our RI does it for you. I will get that to you next week. And then we're going to create a plan together. And we know that a plan is a series of actionable steps to follow. I will work with you on that. And then finally, we're going to keep your club and yourself motivated, because it's going to take a while to successfully resolve the problem. But we can't give up or become frustrated when we don't have instantaneous results. We've been doing this for years. I showed you 4 to 5 years of a steady decline. It's going to take a while for us to come back from that, but we can do it if we follow these steps. Okay, one more, and I think that's it. Okay, so in addition to your help on this, I'll be asking for assistance from zone leadership and their membership coordinators. Has anyone heard of a program called Membership Growth Opportunity, MGO? Anybody at all? Few hands. It's mostly leadership, right? I want to bring that to 6510. Zone leaders have been dying to get this out, and I don't know exactly how we're going to be doing it yet, if we're going to be doing cluster meetings, if we're going to be doing it individually, but they want to come and help us with this, and the more help, the better. So I'll be working with them to roll this out to you. I'm going to need your help to get this done. I plan to keep in very close contact with you. I don't want you to hesitate to contact me. I do have the time to work with you. I would love to come to your clubs, work with your leadership, whatever it is that you need me to do. This is how you contact me. If you go to Rotary6510.org, you'll see I'm listed with everybody else on the left-hand side of that page, or that's my direct email. That's how you're going to find me. So I hope to meet all of you again soon. I'll see you all at PETS. Thank you.
And one of the things I wanted to add on what Mary said about it's important that you recruit now, and here's the thinking about that. If you recruit a person now into your club, what is it, February right now? Okay, February. Think about that. If you could get that person in your club now in February or March, by the time that you are president in July, there's what we call a circle of friends. And these circle of friends people could be, that person could turn into 3 people in 2 years. So that's why it's always important to recruit now. You're always recruiting. You never stop recruiting in Rotary. So think about that circle of friends. So if anybody selfish in here about being president your year, okay, Dickon, okay, I was too. But I always wanted to recruit before I was president, because I was president twice. I wanted to recruit before I was president because it always turned into 2 extra members by the time July rolls around. Because the people are having fun, they're excited about being a new member, and then they get their friends to come in. So think about that in your club. If you, it's always good to have 2 people join at the same time too, instead of 1. Just those are small tips that you can use as president and on your membership when you do that. So just think about this. They're simplistic, but those simplistic things is what grows up with big stats in Rotary. So remember that. All right. My next, we got another special guest today, a star in our Rotary District, Rotary District 6510 Foundation Chair, Lana Slinker. So Lana.
Good to see all of you here.
Well, 2 of them were transfers. 1 meter.
You know, typically when I ask a Rotarian, so what organization is this? They say Rotary. And I say, you're half right. I believe in Rotary. I also believe in international. You don't find these things in this country. Just a thought. I want to talk about the foundation and where we are locally, where we are sort of on the international basis here for the next few minutes. Anybody here working on their 1718 district grant? And I sent out an email a while ago about get the final report done by the end of February, so we have time to review it. We knew we had problems for a little bit. Dave, I think, has got those problems corrected in terms of the final report tab. Wasn't opening for people, and I think it is now. So if you need help on that final report, get a hold of me so that we can work together to make sure that we get those final reports done. And then we're going to be talking this afternoon about certifying for next year's grants. But a little history here. We had requests totaling $51,000 a year ago, knowing that we only had $45,600 available to spend for district grants. So yes, we had to kind of pare down everybody's requests a little bit to fit under budget. This next number, though, the last number on this screen, I think is really significant, because every club chips in some of their own club treasury to help fund a grant project. And the totals, $96,000 that we're spending locally. And if any of you have ever gotten any correspondence from me, chances are the bottom of the signature said 3 mottos. Rotary Foundation motto, doing good in the world, but I've tripled down on that. Doing good in the world, doing good in Southern Illinois, and doing good in your community. And that $96,000 is doing good in Southern Illinois and in your community. I'm going to highlight 3 or 4. Unfortunately, because most of these district grant final reports are in, I don't have pictures for 17-18. These pictures come from a year before. Carlisle did a grant, slow down. We gave them $400. They chipped in a little over $400 of their own to do a flagpole. The significance, I think, of this is where they did it, the Chakota Therapeutic Ranch. Horse riding for therapy, for animal therapy. They say that in collaboration with the Chakota people, 1,000 people will be served over the time for this project. Fairview Heights, Feed the Children, summer feeding program. They recognized that they had a cadre of kids who, once school ended in May, probably weren't going to have much in the way of meals over the summer.
You're clicking.
Oh, I'm not. Thank you. Something is.
Something is,
It's
yeah.
a high tension area. So we gave them $2,000. They spent $4,700 total and served 150 kids for a summer's worth of meals. My favorite of all of that round of grants. This first picture up here, there we go again, Harrisburg. The first picture doesn't really give you enough of a picture. This one in the middle tells me a story. In their park, they assembled a 2-person swing, adult and young child, swinging together. I think that is a pretty big deal. And then, sort of thinking outside the box, O'Fallon asked me about that, as a matter of fact, whether that was a legitimate request. And I did some research and said, yes, go with it. While they were working in Malawi on water and sanitation issues, they discovered, sort of accidentally, that any student that wants to go to high school there has to pay tuition. Tuition at that time was $90 a year. And they had to wear uniforms. Now, we don't think much about $90, personally. But in a country where the average daily wage is $1 a day, that $90 is a big deal. So they asked if they could put together a grant for a total of $2,700 to fund 30 students for a year of high school. And I can tell you off the record that we're starting to see an interesting response on that. Only $90, and with uniforms it's $120 now. Basically, anybody in this room that felt the heart could spend $120 and sponsor a kid for a year. Clubs could spend $120 and sponsor a high school. Our club is talking to Mike Novobilski about this to see if it's possible, and he's talking to Malawi about it. Is it possible to pick up a freshman and sponsor them for all 4 years of high school? And then maybe even carry them into first year of college. So possibilities, but that one kind of touched me. Do our district grants count in Southern Illinois? Yeah, I think big time. I almost called it truth or dare, and I decided that wasn't a wise choice. True or false? Rotary International is a 501c3 charitable organization.
False.
False. The Rotary Foundation is a 501c3.
True.
That's true. Which kind of matters where you write your checks. District 6510 has its own charitable foundation, true or false? But it has a slightly unusual name. It doesn't use the word foundation in the name. It is District 6510 Charities. It is registered 501c3. Your own club is a 501c3.
False.
I know several clubs have their own foundation and 2 separate boards to run them. Separation of duties there. True or false? The Rotary Foundation is made up of Annual Fund, Polio Plus, and the Endowment Fund. Mostly true. As it's stated, it's true. It also includes global grants that are available. And yes, it is possible for an individual, when you write a check to the Rotary Foundation, you don't have to specify one of those 3. You can specify a specific global grant by name and number. True or false? The areas of focus of the Rotary are symbolized.
False, the last one.
Do you recognize those symbols?
Economic development. No, economic development.
I think most of us would recognize a dove with an olive branch. It took me a while to look at that one from a slight distance to realize that that is a stethoscope. I wasn't quite sure if that was a Valentine's heart or what. Stethoscope. Drop of water falling into a lake of some sort. Took me a while on this next one also, until I kind of realized it says an outline of a mother and a baby. A book open. 3 stacks of coins. And I would bet you that almost every district grant that I have read in the past 3 years would have fallen into at least one of those categories. If you want to write a global grant, the second question they ask you is, which one of these buttons are you going to push? What does it apply to? And if you can't fit it into one of those areas, stop writing, stop typing, because it isn't going to be approved. True or false? Money we donate to the annual fund this year gets spent this year. Definitely false. How about polio money this year? Mostly true. Yeah, pretty much turnaround money. Okay, what about that other one though, that annual fund money? It's a 3-year budgetary process. With that in mind, and it's true at both levels. I know how much district grant money I'm going to have available next year and the year after that already. Because 3 years ago, it locked in. And that's good for Rotary for their future budgetary process also. It's not a guessing game. They know what money is going to be available. Unless. True or false, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation pledged to match our $35 million polio with $70 million from their foundation.
True.
Atlanta was a revelation. The Atlanta Convention. Bill Gates did two things that I thought were very significant. On this basis, he said, we will up the ante. You go 50 million, we'll go 100. Which is why Janice stood here a few minutes ago and proposed that $50 per person guideline for polio giving for this year, next year, the year after that. Okay, we have spent $1.7 billion in the chase for polio since about 1984. And to me, a startling number. I have to go back to what? Well, high school, junior high. Anybody else in the room remember when the public swimming pools were closed? Yeah. All the drinking fountains in my schools were closed also. Because at that point, we didn't know how it was transmitted, and it was a sort of a shotgun approach to let's try to be as safe as we can be on polio. In that era, the number on this one is staggering. Can you imagine 1,000 new cases per day? Per day on polio. So eradication has come from 360,000 per year down to 22 cases last year. Under 5 so far this year. We're getting under control. Right now our biggest problem, seriously, is transportation. Not our transportation, the mobility of populations. The ability of polio to cross borders. So we're in another new ballgame. The other thing that Gates said, I think, tells a big story about us. He stood on that stage with about 16,000 people, I think, in the auditorium at the time, to tell us, he said, you know, Rotary, you have something that we will never have. You have hands, feet, boots on the ground worldwide. You have an infrastructure to get polio vaccine into the nooks and crannies of the valleys of the world. And you have the logistical ability to do that, and we will never match that. So we can support you, we just can't do it. You keep doing it. True or false? 6510 Rotarians typically donate approximately 50,000 to Polio Plus in a given year. That's has been fairly consistent, pretty close to true. True or false? We can up the ante locally to 75,000 this year from our clubs. My answer to that. Not intended to be a true-false question, it's the challenge that the Gates Foundation tossed out to us, both globally and locally. How'd you do on the quiz? No dares there, right? Oh, the last one was a dare. Now, couple issues. Fundraising analysis printout, single page. I wish I could blow up individual parts of it, but I'm going to highlight them that way. And identify, you see up here we have information about the annual fund, and over here is Polio Plus, and the endowment fund over here. I'm going to read from this screen, I think. Maybe not. Our giving in history from the bottom up. We finally passed $200,000 a couple years ago. We dropped back just a little bit in the annual fund last year. As of yesterday, I think it was, we're at $81,000 in the annual fund so far for this year. On a per capita basis, our high has been $130 per person district-wide. Last year we were at 127. We're at about 55 right now and growing by the week. Over here on the polio side, you can see what that question about true false, we're just a little under 50,000, but pretty close to 50,000. We had a really good turnout at fall conference in terms of polio donations with the matching program, which boosted us in November and early December. All right, let's look over here. What does EREY stand for?
Every Rotarian every year.
In wording, every Rotarian every year, what does it mean? That one means how many people actually gave anything. And remember how many people we have in the district? Around 1,500. Somewhere between 800 and 900 of them give something to the Rotary Foundation. Okay? We'd like to see that boosted up to 1,200 people giving. And if I move over to sustaining members, what does that mean? That's actually $100 or more. Okay. There again, with 1,500 members, we're looking at 500 sustaining members. This year it's 148 so far and growing. PHS, Paul Harris Society. What's the difference between Paul Harris Fellow and Paul Harris Society?
That's a good answer.
Is that right?
Well, Paul Harris Fellow could be a one-time event in a person's life. And I can tell you, in my father-in-law, my wife's husband's Rotary, it was a big deal. Her father, my wife's father, sorry, my wife's father. Yeah. Good. In Henry Tomlinson's era, it was a big deal at some particular meeting for one of those men, and it was men. So I'd go up to one of his buddies and say, hey, I got my Paul Harris Fellow. And it was obvious intention that that was the only Paul Harris Fellow that that person was ever going to get. Now, Paul Harris Society, on the other hand, is an ongoing commitment, year by year, to keep doing that $1,000, to keep growing that reputation, growing polio money, growing the annual fund. You see, the more we contribute to annual fund, the more we get back from the annual fund for our own scholarship or for our own district grants. I think that number was 46,000 for this year. It's 50,000 for next year that we will have available for district grants. Okay? Paul Harris Society, we have, I think, 78 Paul Harris Society members. Interesting. It's hard to read it from that distance. Those two highlighted areas are non-giving clubs. Typically about 4 or 5 clubs out of our 49 that give nothing to the annual fund, and about 10 or 11 that give nothing to polio in any given year. We're trying to shrink those two numbers. And I'm getting close here. I like the trend that that is setting. And by the way, if I remember right, this is about a $30,000 gap between goal and actual in those 3 years. Well, actually, that's been typical for longer than just these 3 years. The fact that when you set your goals, your predecessors set their goals, they were being pretty accurate or consistent, although short. We ended up collecting more money than we said we were going to collect. But then I get worried about what's happening there in the most recent years. This is not finished for the current year, obviously. We hope that it ends up somewhere up in here by the end of the year. But as a foundation person, I'm going to stand here and say, when you put your foundation goals in, there is a button you can click there to see your 5-year history of your club. Both, you'll see 2 bars for each year. What did my predecessor set for a goal and what actually happened? So take a look at those histories for your own club and see what's accurate. Ask yourself, do you think we can keep doing what we've been doing? Can we reach an average of $100 per member? If we've got 27 members in the club, are we going to get to $2,700? If you got 58 members in the club, will we get to $5,800 by the end of the Rotary year? I'd be happy to make presentations to your club. My email address is lannyrotary@charter.net. Live long and prosper.
Thank you very much, Lanny. All right, we're going to play a little game now. If you are our president-elect, I need you to come up to the front right now. So all the president-elects, this is a twofold game. Dennis is smiling. So if you're a president-elect, please come up to the front. And you're going to say, well, what are you going to be doing in this game? Well, one of the parts of the game is we're going to be taking a picture. And one of the things I want you guys to do is I want to, if every one of you could tell us who you are and where you're from, I would appreciate that, which club you're from. So your name and your club.
Hi, I'm Holly Midget, and I am president and president-elect from the Scooter Rotary Club.
Jeff Parker from the Swansea Club.
Cassidy Beck, I am president and president-elect of the Monroe County Club.
Rick Dowdell, president.
Ray Rohr, I'm president-elect of the Rotary Club of O'Fallon Sunrise.
Dick Erdman, I'm the president-elect of Fairview Heights Midday.
Marilyn Matthews, president-elect Jackson Williamson County Sunset.
Woody Almond, O'Fallon Club.
Evan Collier, Heron, president-elect. Tim Sullivan, president-elect Fairfield.
Will Welsh, president-elect St. Clair County West.
Terry Foster, president-elect Metropolis.
Justin Jeffers, president-elect Sparta.
Chuck Nelson, president-elect Marion.
Good morning, I'm Jim Flagg. Welcome to Mount Vernon. I'm the president-elect of Mount Vernon. Appreciate y'all coming.
Patrick Haskell, president-elect Carmine.
Robin Dean, president-elect Mount Carmel.
Brian Sharon, president-elect Waterloo.
Sheila Thompson, president-elect Hamilton County.
Tina Koch, St. Clair County Sunset, president-elect.
We gotta get over to Tina and her.
Jason Cook, I'm from Carterville.
You didn't say president-elect,
I think that's all.
Tina Suarez, president-elect of Centralia Noon Rotary.
Joe Hackney, president-elect of Flora.
Linda Brown, president-elect Richland County Rotary.
Sharon Harris Johnson, president-elect of Rotary Club of Carbondale Breakfast.
Paul Higginbotham, president-elect Lawrenceville.
Rob Pfeiffer, President-elect of Redbud.
Anybody else? All right, so here's what we're gonna do. We need to get everybody for a picture. And then after we take the picture, Ken wants you to do one at a time and say hi to the camera. So everybody, let's get everybody a picture real fast with our governor-elect. Who's got a camera? There we go. Okay, while they're doing that, do we have any president-elect nominees in the house? Okay, I want you guys to stand up and get over for Gary. We want you guys to go with Gary over there, and we're going to get pictures with you guys too over there. All right, are we ready to go for the picture? Governor, Jill. Everybody, again. Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Janice, you gotta get in front. Janice, you get in front. All right, let's scrunch you a little bit.
You gotta go over there.
Let's make sure that the governor doesn't die. Is that okay? I can't see everybody.
Can we see everybody?
Actually, can you guys maybe like squat in the front? Is that possible?
There we go. We want to see Dick's head. We want to see his hat.
Ronnie, you gotta go. You gotta start first. Alright, everybody say Rotary. Rotary. We got Spock in the background.
All right, one at a time, Ken.
Just as you're walking by, either point to the camera, wave, say hello, say who you are, just one at a time. Come on through. Be as goofy as you want.
All right, while they're doing that over there, we are moving over to the president-elect nominees. I want everybody to tell me who you are. Tell me who you are and where you're from. Jeff, tell me where you're from.
Jeff Perry, now Connell.
Rich Leonard, Rotary Club of O'Fallon.
Roger Burger from Mississippi, Illinois.
Hey, Superman.
Woody Allman from the Centralia Nude Club.
Hey.
Ken Cooley, St. Clair County, Sunset.
Jared Villiano, Swansea.
J.D. Cup, Jackson Williamson County, Sunset.
Alex Ebert, Fairview Heights, Midday.
Kevin Wilkes, Sparta, Illinois.
What am I doing?
And Gary's going to recruit you guys. We need to see you next month.
I'll be a disaster.
Hard work. Smile for the picture. Jill's going to take your picture. Move it a little bit. All right. All right, while we're doing that, Governor-elect, do you have anything else? I know you have anything else.
We want to remind you that next Saturday is 30 years of Women in Rotary. There's a handout on the back table if you want more information. Governor Jill, can they still register for Saturday the 17th?
Yes, it is on deck, or if you don't know how to do that, come see me and we can take care of that right now today. We'd love to have you.
How many people are going Saturday? This is cool. All right, good deal.
Also, as you're having lunch, you're sitting in your areas, you might want to talk about a project you might work on together.
All right, Dave? Here we go, sir.
Well, lunch is supposed to be here at 11:30, and as you can see, it's 11:35. Yeah, they're coming in. We're gonna put lunches back on the table when I get here. Should be here in a minute. There'll be different kinds of sandwiches.
All right, so we'll have the lunch is on its way. It might be coming as we speak. So like Governor-elect says, make sure you learn who your people are at your table. Think about possible projects that you could do with the people at your table. That's why we do. That's why we have you setting up with your